Even though the amazing world of Gumball is considered to be one of the most creative and entertaining shows of all time, it also has some really hated moments. These moments made us really uncomfortable and awful. So to find out which episodes you might want to avoid, we're gonna dig out those episodes that absolutely ruined our childhood. Starting with number 7 and to the most messed up episode that probably gave us all trust issues. Episode 7, The Understanding. The whole mess starts with Principal Brown introducing a new kid, Peter Pepperoni, who speaks in this messed up mix of English and complete gibberish that nobody can understand. And instead of being honest about not understanding him, Gumball and Darwin decide to just pretend they know what he is saying so they don't hurt his feelings. And it becomes a nightmare scenario where the boys keep agreeing to things they have no clue about. Watching them nod along like, yeah, totally, I understand completely, while Peter is saying absolute nonsense is painful as hell. They end up getting dragged into Peter's family drama and somehow become involved in what might be actual criminal activity just because they were too polite to say, "Sorry dude, we have no idea what you're talking about." By the end, Gumball and Darwin are literally running from the law because they agreed to help someone they never actually understood in the first place. It was honestly one of those most stressful things to watch and must not have been accepted by most of the viewers. This episode became one of the most hated one because this goes way too far and just shows how being polite can completely ruin your entire life, which is not exactly the lesson you want your kids to learn. But things are only gonna get worse, because this next episode takes childhood trauma to a whole new level. Episode 6, The Portion. Here it starts with Gumball and Darwin trying to help Hector because he's sick of being a giant, and you can't really blame the guy for wanting to be normal size. But of course, these two idiots decide the best way to help him, and it's by making a shrinking portion. Even though they have zero experience with chemistry or magic, or most importantly, common sense. They convince Hector to drink this mysterious potion, and at first everything seems great because he gets to experience normal people things for once, like actually fitting through doorways. But then the portion starts losing its power, and instead of going back to normal, Hector starts transforming it into all the weird, gross creatures that look like rejected Pokemon designs. It is really a body horror. Watching this poor guy's body change into nasty weird forms is unsettling as hell. The worst part is how helpless Hector becomes as his body keeps changing into things he can't control, and that makes us really stressed. You can see the panic in his eyes as he realizes he may be stuck like this forever. Most discussions that occur between fans were due to this scene that were supposed to be funny but really were depressing. Seriously, what were the animators thinking when they drew this stuff? But if you think that's messed up, wait till you see this next episode, because it's about to get really uncomfortable. Episode 5, The Cringe. We see Gumball just trying to use the bathroom like a normal person, and then he runs into Hot Dog Guy, and suddenly everything becomes awkward as hell. The whole thing is basically about Gumball and Hot Dog Guy being so weird around each other that they can't even function in the same room. And it's way too relatable for comfort. They end up going back in time to figure out why they're so weird with each other, and the journey is more painful than the destination, because watching them stumble throughout the conversation is hard to watch. This episode is brutal because of how relatable the awkwardness is. We've all had those people we just can't talk to normally for no reason, and this episode just takes that and makes it 10 times worse. Most of us must have really felt it relatable with our real life, and watching this episode must have been uncomfortable. But this next episode makes social awkwardness look like a smooth walk in the park, because we're about to dive into some serious toxic relationship territory. Episode 4, The Girlfriend. The whole thing starts with Jamie deciding she needs a boyfriend. Unfortunately for Darwin, she sets her sights on him, and he's too nice to say no, which should have been a red flag from the very beginning. This isn't some cute romantic little subplot. Oh no, guys, this is real torture disguised as a cartoon episode about young love and how realistic the toxic behavior patterns are. Jamie basically forces Darwin into a relationship without his consent, saying things simply like, "You're my boyfriend now," and then becomes possessive, controlling monster who won't let him breathe. She threatens anyone who gets in between them, including Gumball, who ends up getting beaten up and shoved into lockers just for trying to help his brother escape this terrible relationship. Watching Darwin get trapped in this toxic situation, while everyone around him suffers, is awful and way too real for as kids show. This stuff actually happens in real life. The episode is so messed up because it normalizes abusive relationship behavior and shows it is a comedy when it's actually horrible to watch. This episode gave me trust issues about dating. We are only getting started because these next episodes are gonna mess with your head in ways you didn't think it were possible in a cartoon. Episode 3, The Worst. Here it began with the Wattersons all coming home from school and work, having the absolute worst day of their lives. But then things get weird real quick when they decide to have this competition to see who actually has it the worst in life. To make it fair, they literally swap genders and ages with each other. And what the hell were the writers thinking when they made this up? Because watching Gumball become a middle-aged woman is a pure nightmare. Nicole becomes this old man. Richard becomes a little girl, and Anais turns into Nicole. It's just uncomfortable to watch the entire time. Seriously. The whole episode is basically the family trying to show each other on who suffers more, which hits way too close to home for anyone who's been in a toxic household where everyone competes for victim status. This episode is so messed up because it normalizes this idea that families should compete over who has it worse instead of supporting each other through difficult times. The body swapping elements just added this extra layer of creepiness that makes the whole thing feel like a fever dream you can't wake up from. It's supposed to be funny, but it just feels wrong. Episode 2, The Nobody. This episode introduces us to Rob, who starts off as this background character that nobody notices or remembers, and the concept alone is already depressing enough before you can even see what happens to him. Rob becomes obsessed with being noticed and starts doing real desperate things to get attention from Gumball and Darwin, and it just gets sadder and sadder to watch this poor guy fall apart. This episode gets darker and darker as Rob realizes that the only way anyone will pay attention to him is if he becomes their enemy, which is just heartbreaking when you think about it. Rob's struggle is so relatable. We all felt forgotten at some point, and this episode just makes it way worse. He literally transforms himself into this villain character and starts terrorizing the school just so people will acknowledge his existence and remember his name. Watching his transformation is hard. The ending where Rob accepts that he has to be the bad guy just to exist in other people's mind, is one of the most depressing things I've ever seen in a cartoon. This episode really messes with your head because it makes you question whether it's better to be hated than to be completely forgotten. And that's not a question kids should be asking themselves. But now we're at number 1, and this episode is so messed up that it probably scarred an entire generation of kids. Episode 1, The Inquisition. A mysterious school superintendent comes to Elmore Junior High to end all the cartoonish way that make the show what it is, and just describing it makes me so uncomfortable. Principal Brown is running around in panic, warning everyone that this guy is coming to destroy their entire world, and he was right to be scared. The superintendent is this creepy live-action character who wants to turn all the cartoon characters into boring, realistic people, and watching him destroy everything fun about the show is awful. He makes everything corporate and soul-crushing. I mean, like real life. Watching all our favorite characters lose their personalities and become these boring people is like watching your childhood murdered. This episode is so messed up because it basically is about how society tries to crush creativity out of people, especially especially kids. The way all the characters just accept their fate and give up fighting is the most depressing part, because it feels like watching people give up on their dreams. This episode really messes you up because it basically tells kids that growing up means giving up everything fun and creative about yourself, and that the real world will crush your spirit. For a show that was supposed to be about imagination and creativity, ending on such a tragedy just feels like a betrayal of everything it stood for. And it's no wonder this episode traumatized so many people. Yeah, so those were the Gumball episodes that ruined our childhood, according to how much damage they caused. Let me know down in the comments below if you agree with this list, and make sure to subscribe or I will find you and force you to watch The Girlfriend. You do not want to do that. Subscribe!